In the entire panorama of human history, rarely has an individual left such a profound mark and caused such complex repercussions as Jesus of Nazareth. His influence extended far beyond the borders of a small geographical region in the Middle East to reshape the entire moral, philosophical, and legal foundation of the Western world. Before entering into debates about his divinity, we must establish a solid empirical foundation agreed upon by modern academic scholars. Whether secular historians, Christian scholars, or independent researchers, the vast majority agree that Jesus was a real historical figure. His existence is not only recorded in religious texts, but is also mentioned by pagan historians of the time, such as Tacitus of Rome and Josephus of Judea. However, the fault line of all centuries-spanning debates lies not in whether he existed, but in the nature of the supernatural phenomena surrounding his life. To better visualize the fragmentation in human perception, let us look at the global religious demographic data of the 21st century. The Christian community, making up about 34% of the world's population, views him not merely as a sage, but as the incarnate Word, the Son of God carrying supreme power. For them, miracles like healing the blind or resurrecting the dead are not literary metaphors, but genuine historical events proving his divinity. At another extreme, originating from the same region, the Jewish people, comprising about 0.2% of the population, approach the story through a completely different lens. In the historical context of the first century, they were desperately waiting for a Messiah with military and political strength to liberate them from the yoke of the Roman Empire. Therefore, a carpenter from impoverished Galilee, preaching about loving one's enemies and ultimately dying on a cross, did not fit the portrait of the Savior they expected. Next is Islam, the fastest-growing religion, accounting for about 25% of the global population, which reserves a special reverence for Jesus under the name Isa. The Quran records him as one of the greatest prophets, confirms he was born of a virgin, and acknowledges the miracles he performed. However, Islam draws a remarkably strict theological boundary. Jesus performed miracles through the grace of Allah, and he is absolutely not the Son of God. The secular and atheist demographic, making up about 16%, rejects all supernatural elements and explains the Jesus phenomenon through theories of crowd psychology and mythological evolution. The remaining roughly 25% of humanity, including Hinduism, Buddhism, and indigenous folk faiths, creates a colorful yet highly contradictory space for interpretation. Some Buddhist scholars might view Jesus' miracles as a form of supernatural power achieved through high-level meditation practices. Meanwhile, some branches of Hinduism might assimilate his image into their massive pantheon, considering him an avatar of higher beings sent to maintain Dharma. When aggregating all this data, we face a fascinating statistical truth. Over 71% of humanity, albeit to different degrees and within different frameworks, believes Jesus did things beyond physical limits. The disparity between mass belief and modern scientific methodology leads us to the center of an epistemological crisis. We live in an era where empirical science is revered as the gold standard of truth, where everything must be measured, verified, and replicated in a laboratory. Clearly, no reputable scientific journal would peer-review a study on walking on water or turning water into fine wine. But we must also fairly admit that the absence of scientific evidence does not automatically equate to the evidence of absence, especially in the field of historical research. History and science operate on two completely different coordinate systems. Science studies repeatable laws, while history studies unique events that have permanently passed. We cannot time travel back to the moment Julius Caesar was assassinated to record the event on camera. We can only rely on the fragments of ancient texts. So, when a multitude of witnesses and ancient documents collectively recount the supernatural events surrounding the life of Jesus, which interpretation do we choose? That is precisely when the concepts of absolute truth and relative truth enter the philosophical arena. An atheist might declare that the laws of physics are the only absolute truth, and religion is merely a relative tool for psychological comfort. But to a devout believer, the teachings of the Creator are the absolute and eternal truth, while current scientific understanding is merely relative and subject to error. Modern society often tries to maintain peace by encouraging people to view each other's beliefs as relative truths worthy of respect. The slogan, "You believe what you want, I believe what I want," sounds incredibly civilized and liberating in intellectual discussions. However, history has exposed a harsh reality. Humans rarely maintain that tolerance when someone else's relative truth begins to encroach on their living space. When religious beliefs reshape textbooks, alter marriage laws, or dictate the right to bodily autonomy, fiery conflicts instantly erupt. The entire history of human civilization, from a certain perspective, is simply a series of bloody struggles to win the right to define whose absolute truth will be applied to the whole society. To understand why one figure could create such massive philosophical rifts, we are forced to step back 2,000 years to place Jesus in his exact context of existence. At the dawn of the 1st century, the region of Judea was not a peaceful place. It was a suffocating political crucible under the sword of the Roman Empire. The impoverished populace was exploited to the bone by a dual layer of oppression: extortionate taxes from the Roman government and rigorous tributes demanded by the Jewish religious elite. Any seed of rebellion was extinguished by the most brutal and highly symbolic punishment: crucifixion. In that suffocating context, according to New Testament accounts, Jesus was born in Bethlehem, carrying a highly mysterious origin and omens of a new king. His appearance immediately triggered a localized political earthquake, prompting the puppet king Herod to order a massacre of infants to eliminate the perceived threat to his throne. His family had to flee to Egypt as refugees, a detail that sharply illustrates the instability of the times, before returning to live in obscurity in the small village of Nazareth. The next nearly 30 years of his life were shrouded in mystery, save for a single record of his prodigy-like intellect when debating with priests at the temple at the age of 12. The true turning point only came when he turned 30, marked by his baptism by John the Baptist, an ascetic monk embodying the style of Old Testament prophets. Texts describe this moment as a shocking epiphany, where the heavens opened up and a voice confirmed his messianic identity. But before stepping into the public eye, he exiled himself into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, facing hunger, isolation, and ultimate temptations of power. This was not merely a physical trial, but a philosophical preparation, affirming his refusal to use his power for personal gain or short-term political goals. When officially commencing his ministry, Jesus' strategy for winning hearts and minds completely contradicted conventional standards of power. He did not seek backing from the elite or the aristocracy, but chose 12 disciples from the most common backgrounds: uneducated fishermen and a tax collector despised by society. His activities along the Sea of Galilee quickly generated massive waves of attention, not only because of his sermons containing profound humanistic philosophy. According to recorded eyewitnesses, his fame spread like a supernatural phenomenon. The blind could see, the lame walked, storms were silenced, and even death was reversed. He became a beacon of hope for the marginalized, but at the same time, he became a thorn in the prevailing power system. The Pharisees, conservative scholars holding the authority to interpret religious law, considered him a dangerous blasphemer who was disrupting social order. They were outraged to see him freely healing on the Sabbath, blatantly dining with sinners, and bluntly condemned the hypocrisy of the priesthood of the time. The event of his entering Jerusalem and overturning the money changers in the temple was the straw that broke the camel's back, transforming him from an ideological threat into a present security risk. The Last Supper was not just a religious ritual, but a moment where he publicly predicted the betrayal by one of his own close disciples. His arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane, Judas's treacherous kiss, and the hastily convened, politically manipulated trials exposed the total corruption of the judicial system at the time.